This series contains adult language and descriptions of graphic violence. Listener discretion is advised. We're going to have no teaser description for this episode. Well, I guess I should say hi. Hello. Welcome to Death by Southwest.
Hello.
It is a little bit weird when we record the bonus and then we record this and we have to say hello and goodbye multiple times. But we just recorded our bonus and now so that we can jump right into this crime story today. It's a little bit of a stretch in terms of Southwest. It takes place in West Hollywood, Beverly Hills. So not very Southwest, but I'm pushing the boundaries of it a little bit here. I don't think anybody cares, right?
I don't care. It's just not Southwest.
I know.
I like to open the parameters.
Yeah, I do too.
It's not Southwest.
It's not Southwest.
I'd say
West.
Palm Springs isn't even Southwest.
No, because Palm Springs isn't it a little bit north? Well, it's inland, I guess.
No, Palm Springs is south of LA.
But in.
Right,
East,
which would make it more Southwest.
Yeah, that's
I mean, west, sure, but south. Okay, so it's LA?
West Hollywood and Beverly Hills. It's actually a neighborhood in Beverly Hills called Trousdale Estates. And Trousdale Estates is a neighborhood of Beverly Hills located in the foothills of the Santa Monica Mountains. It was developed in the 1950s, named after Paul Trousdale, a real estate developer. I feel like I've heard that Trousdale. I've heard that on, what's that show with Josh Flagg and that we watched, the real estate one?
Beverly Hills.
Oh, wow. How can neither of us think of this? You know what I'm talking about, though.
Love that show.
Yeah.
Well, more love some of the characters.
Right. But I feel like I've heard them talk about the Trousdale neighborhood. I'm 100% certain I have.
Josh Flagg and Josh Altman.
That's right.
That's not the name of the show, though.
That is not. The grounds originally belonged to Lucy Doheny and Edward Doheny Jr., the son of oil tycoon Edward Doheny. And the average house price in Trousdale Estates is around $11 million.
Is that currently?
That was in 2019, so I bet it's more now.
Okay, and does this take place in 2019?
It takes place in the early 2010. Took me a while to get there. So there's a lot of interesting things about Trousdale, but some notable residents in the past and currently include Elvis Presley, Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Ray Charles, Howard Hughes, Richard Nixon, Jennifer Aniston, David Spade, Charlie Puth, Jane Fonda. So lots of people.
Charlie Puth.
Singer. He has that duet with Selena Gomez that I like.
Is he sibling to, what's her name, Puth?
Who?
In the movie Midsummer.
Oh, Florence Pugh.
Oh.
Her last name is Pugh.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't know if that's how you say it. That was a real interesting connection.
Well, I thought her name was Puth.
Yeah.
Also, that
similar.
movie really sticks in my mind. You haven't even seen the worst of it. Oh, you did.
Mm-hmm.
I made you watch the.
You sure did.
Garage part.
Mm-hmm.
Woof.
Yeah.
So those are notable residents of Trousdale, which is within Beverly Hills, which is within West Hollywood.
Yes.
Ish. Or adjacent-ish.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. And West Hollywood, there's a lot to say about West Hollywood. So
don't get me started on what I want to talk about.
Oh, I know what you want to talk about. In 2023, the population of West Hollywood is approximately 36,000 residents. It spans an area of about 1.9 square miles. Pretty small.
Yeah.
Notable features: Sunset Strip is there. iconic music venues like the Roxy Theater, Whiskey A Go-Go, Viper Room, a very large LGBTQ plus community. The LA Pride goes right through West Hollywood. You know, I mean, the crosswalks are like painted rainbow instead of white. This was interesting. It said historic sites, and the 2 historic sites that it listed was Sunset Tower Hotel and Chateau Marmont. But me and Jenna stayed at the Sunset Tower Hotel, which was cool.
It was cool. It was really cool.
Yeah, it was really very like old Hollywood-ish.
It was cool.
Yeah, that was fun.
Also, if you like Vanderpump,
yes,
I can't not mention that.
Well, of course,
like, WeHo.
Yeah, exactly. It takes like Vanderpump Rules and all the Vanderpump restaurants aside from Villa Blanca, which is on Rodeo Drive. Takes place in West Hollywood. It's just a cool place. West Hollywood is just a really cool, walkable, interesting, hip area. Right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I could spend a lot of time talking about it, but I feel like it won't do it justice. So I won't. And I'll just jump into our story today, which focuses on, we have several main characters. I'm going to tell you about 2 of them. And I had to write her name out phonetically because it's spelled C-H-I-E. How would you say that?
C-H-I-E. Chi.
Yeah, that's how I would say it too, but it's Chie.
Huh.
So Chie Coggins Johnson.
That kind of reminds me of your old ex-sister-in-law.
Jihei.
Kind of.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I could remember it.
It rhymes. Yeah, that's right. Jihei. It's just with a CH instead of a J. Chihei.
Chie. Maybe, is there like a ampersand or something? Well, you know, that's like in the...
Yes.
That's wrong. I was looking for this one.
Yeah, the thing that goes over.
Yeah. Chihei.
So she grew up in West Hollywood. She was born in 1990. Her parents split up when she was 4, and she lived with her mother and was raised by her mother. They lived in a kind of average middle-class apartment. And at a very young age, her mom introduced her to competitive rhythmic gymnastics. And she began competing and winning competitions. She made a real name for herself as the top youth gymnast in LA. She was a silver medal winner in the Junior Olympics.
Wow.
Yeah, she did it for years and years and was very, very successful and very good at it until she kind of got into her teen years and became very aware that like being an award-winning gymnast doesn't allow you much freedom. And she did not like that, especially when she turned about 15. She decided she wanted to quit gymnastics. She didn't want to do it anymore. She wanted more freedom to do what she wanted and pursue other passions. And one of her newfound passions was boys. She was boy crazy, loved attention from boys, loved to flirt with boys, wanted to be around boys, started experimenting with drinking, pot, cocaine. And when she was, I believe, 17, her mom took all of their savings and shipped her to a long-term residential rehab in Arizona. I don't have the name of the rehab, but I wish I did. I know I couldn't find it. But she was there for a year. So a very long term.
So it was like a behavioral educational
treatment center.
Yeah, there's a different name, but yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so at age 17.
Yeah, because I was thinking like Wickenburg or Sierra Tucson or something like that. But like
those
are
for
a year.
No, there's like, I can't think of the phrase, but they don't refer to them, and who knows about this, but like where it's like for behaviorally challenged, quote unquote, individuals.
Sure.
Where it's like boarding school.
Right.
So 17, she was like a junior.
Yeah. And she returned home 1 year later at 18 and returned home to some very strict new rules. No partying, no boys, no going out till all hours of the night. Her mom wanted her to get a job. And she adhered to this for a few months. But after a few months of this, she once again began sneaking out, partying again. She really went right back to LA's party scene, which I can't even imagine how much fun it must have been and also how nuts it must have been. She reconnected with an old friend from high school, 21-year-old Tony Takazato, who was the son of a wealthy Japanese film producer. The two of them started partying a lot together and then eventually started dating. And Tony's dad lived in Japan and just allowed Tony to live at this mansion in Trousdale. And he had a huge allowance. He didn't have to work. He just got to have fun and live in a mansion in Beverly Hills.
You know what this kind of is reminiscent of, just this part?
Mm-hmm.
It's bringing up thoughts of the group of people that, around this time, early 2000, mid 2000s, did the Paris Hilton, Lindsay Lohan, right?
Totally, 100%. Well, that's what I was thinking when I was saying like it must have been really fun to be out at the club scene, because that 2010, that time, it really was social media was kind of new, iPhones were kind of new, so people were still, celebrities at least, were still willing to not be as cautious about everything. You know what I mean? Like now, you can't do anything. So Chie and Tony spent like every night out at the clubs or hosting parties at his mansion. And then when her mom caught her sneaking out, she was then kicked out. Her mom was like, you cannot stay here in this house anymore. You are not allowed to come home. And so she moved in with Tony in January of 2010. And the parties just kept getting bigger, more people, more drugs, crazier. And after a few months of that, almost like every single day, Tony started kind of being like, okay, I don't want to do this all the time. I want to stay home a little bit more. I don't want to go out every night. Yeah, he was getting burnt out.
Because he probably, if he had a place, a huge or a mansion, a nice place to live, his dad also from Japan, you said, was probably giving him money each month.
Tons of money.
Just, they didn't have to work, or
he
didn't.
He had a big
least.
allowance.
Yeah.
But it was just, he was tired of it. And Chie did not like this. So she wanted somebody who could keep up with her appetite for partying. So they eventually split up, but her mom still wouldn't let her move home. So Tony agreed to let her stay at the mansion, but strictly as roommates. And it kind of worked out. Like they both adhered, they still liked each other, but just not in that way anymore. And Chie began looking for a new boyfriend who could keep up with her partying. And in May of 2010, she met 23-year-old Scott Barker. Scott was born in 1987. He grew up in West Springfield, Massachusetts. And from a young age, he just was kind of like larger than life. He was very popular. He played a lot of sports. He had a lot of girlfriends. He was always invited to every party. He was just this kind of big personality that everyone liked and wanted to be around. And he really wanted to be a screenwriter and a club promoter and ultimately to be famous. So at 21 years old, he moved to LA in hopes of pursuing all of those things, but found, it was much harder than he had anticipated. Like club promoter are like a diamond, like there's a million club promoters and stuff. It's really hard to like stand out.
Especially if you're coming from, you said Massachusetts, like he didn't have maybe he knew people in LA, but he didn't have a community, a base. He hadn't cultivated that, I imagine.
No, he had not. And so he didn't have immediate success in terms of like getting famous or jobs, but he did have success in partying and meeting people because he was always kind of the life of the party. So he very quickly met and kind of embedded himself in this LA party scene. And eventually met Chie at a house party. He was instantly struck by how beautiful she was and her ability to party like a professional partier.
What does that mean? I think
just that they could stay out all night, do as many drugs and drinking and party hop and not ever kind of tire and then go to sleep
and do it all over again.
Yes, exactly. So they did. They started partying together basically every night. And as they spent more and more time together, their relationship grew to what many people felt was almost like an obsession with each other. They claimed they were falling in love with each other. A lot of people thought it was just lust. It was just this whirlwind romance, kind of punctuated by lots of booze, lots of drugs, lots of fun, fast times.
Yeah, I mean, maybe this is my old age, but like, I like to hang out and party. But how do you know if you're truly falling in love with someone if you're always using substances, always in fun time?
Right.
Even forget about substances, just
Right.
always in heightened states of excitement and fun and newness and party
Well,
and
yeah,
people. And
it's easy to really think that you love somebody or are leaning in that direction when everything you're doing is fun and exciting and you're experiencing it together.
As I say that and you say that, I think also that could initially, right off the bat, also cause problems.
Absolutely.
Which maybe it does.
If you're not compatible partiers or compatible with having those types of experiences, they were. So things were exciting and fun, but a couple months go by and Scott begins kind of thinking that he wants more than just partying. Like, he's really falling in love with her. He wants to marry her. He wants to start a life with her. And he just found her to be almost like perfect in every way, except for there was one thing that Scott kind of could not get on board with. Whenever she wasn't staying at his place with him, and he had roommates, it wasn't like a great place to stay. She would stay there sometimes, or they would party all night sometimes. But the nights when they weren't partying all night or she wasn't staying there, he would drop her at this mansion in Beverly Hills. And she was like, but you can't, I'm sorry, you're not allowed inside.
Her ex-boyfriend's home.
Right. But she told Scott it's just a relative's house and they don't want me to bring friends in. So, sorry. And he didn't really ever believe her, but he kind of went with it for a while until he couldn't take it anymore. And he confronted her and said, this is not, whose house is this? This is not your relative's house. And she said, you're right. I'm sorry. It is the home of my ex-boyfriend, but nothing is going on between us. He's just giving me a place to stay. We're just roommates. And Scott did not like this. He was furious. She, again reiterated, it's just because I have nowhere else to go. And Scott wanted her to move in with him, but the roommates were unreliable. There was talk of evictions because they weren't covering their rent. It just wasn't a stable situation for her to move in with him.
Well, how would you like that if after so many months someone revealed, it's not just because I'm not ready for you to meet my uncle that I live with, or
right.
what,
I would very much not like it.
Yeah.
At all. So Scott's solution to this, he said, look, my brother's in Florida. He said he could get us jobs. I think we should move there and start a new life. There's no reason for us to stay here. We've kind of exhausted the party scene. Like, let's go start fresh. And she actually agreed. She said, she had grown up in West Hollywood, been there her whole life. She was like, I'm ready to try something new. So they set their moving date for July 23rd. I know, Mark's birthday.
Always Death Day. Forget about Mark.
That's right. So on July 20th, 2010, just before 6 a.m., Beverly Hills Police Station 911 receives a phone call from a frantic, screaming woman who is yelling for help, but she's so frantic. It's broken English. They really can't understand what she's saying, but they understand that there's an emergency and she needs help. So they go to the address, which was a beautiful mansion in Trousdale Estates. And once they get in, they get in through the gate up on the driveway and they start to walk in, they notice the garage doors open. And so they walk into the garage where they discover a horrific and gruesome scene. There was a man lying in a huge pool of blood with his body was covered in stab wounds everywhere. It was determined eventually that he had 58 stab wounds. And this body was
Tony
Takazato. His first name is actually Katsutoshi Takazato. It's such a cool name. So police are like, okay, well, we couldn't understand the woman they don't know what they're walking into. Is the killer still there? What's happening? So they begin to very cautiously kind of walk around the property when a woman comes running out from the house into the garage, frantic. All they can really understand is that she's the housekeeper. She speaks Japanese. She really doesn't speak much English. So they called to get a translator, and while they're waiting for the translator, they begin to kind of examine the crime scene. They notice that Tony is wearing boxer shorts and a t-shirt, and there is just so much blood. And in his fist is a piece of fabric. And so right off the bat, they determine that he was probably ambushed, taken by surprise, but that he did try to fight back because
it's either someone's shirt or if he was pulled out of bed.
Right.
And do we know who called 911? I mean,
the
housekeeper.
You do.
Oh, well then what did she say on the 911 call?
They couldn't understand.
Okay.
Just help.
Got it.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay.
The ME arrived and is the one who determined, they ultimately determined 58 stab wounds. The fatal wound he was stabbed so hard it went through his ribs and actually pierced his heart.
Well, that's source of all that blood.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, all the stab wounds, but
it's interesting that not interesting. Often in a lot of these cases, there are no, pictures of the actual murder or crime scene. I've very rarely seen them because they're generally gory or for privacy for the family, the loved ones. But I did see images of him and this crime scene, and it was an exceptional amount of blood. But so they're kind of examining around the garage. There's no real obvious evidence to point to anything at this point,
except for maybe that piece of cloth,
the piece of cloth,
fabric,
which they're going to obviously get tested. And then they did find footprints walking through the bloody pool away from the body, and then eventually, I believe, went into the grass towards the gate around the property. So two neighbors approached the police. They have lived on the street for a while. They're married couple, doctors. They walk every morning, and they said, we were walking when all of a sudden this man wearing dark clothing jumps over the fence and runs down the street. And they said then a black car pulled up, but the person had a mask on their face who was running away. A black car pulled up, the person got inside, and the car sped away.
And they couldn't see any description of the driver.
No. So all that this told them is this was premeditated, this was planned.
And it sounds like it was a male in the dark clothing.
They think it was a male, is what the neighbors said. So still not much to go on, but it's something. Once the translator arrived, the housekeeper said that she actually witnessed the murder. She was woken up. Her bedroom was kind of kitty corner to the garage, and so she was woken up by loud thumping noises in the garage. She walked towards the garage, opened the garage door, and saw Tony and somebody else. Both of their backs were to her, but Tony was being held in a chokehold and being stabbed. So the person was behind Tony, had him in a chokehold with one hand, and then was using the other hand to stab the front of him. She ran inside, and that's when she called 911. So they asked, could you identify the attacker? Can you tell us anything? Height, weight, skin color, things like that. She really couldn't because of the mask and because their backs were to her. She really couldn't see anything. But she did say that she heard Tony scream, "Stop, Eddie, stop."
Eddie?
Who's Eddie?
Well, this is totally my own weird brain, but my brain goes to maybe she heard Eddie, but maybe he said, "Buddy, stop, buddy." Which could be any
Oh,
guy.
that's so interesting. That's actually a really interesting. My brain didn't go there at all. Your brain is more interesting than mine. So they put together a list of all of Tony's known friends. The housekeeper helped with that. And then as they reached out to friends, they got more and more names of friends. Unfortunately, there were no friends named Eddie at all. But a lot of the friends that they did talk to, several of them all kind of had the same sentiment that things were kind of hard for Tony as of lately. Tony's dad had recently said, I'm done paying for this extravagant lifestyle. You got to get a job or go to school, or I'm cutting you off and you'll have to move out of the house. And his dad had given him, I guess, to the end of that month to find a way to start contributing financially. Obviously, he's not going to be able to afford an $11 million mansion.
Show a little effort,
Exactly.
a little something.
Exactly. And that was something else that was interesting. I did look up his dad. His dad has produced 5 C-rated movie. You know what I mean? Unknown, no nothings. No.
He must have other business.
Yeah. Yeah. So Tony was the friends were saying that Tony was really feeling the pressure to make money, but he was not about to go out and get a regular job or go to school. So he decided he was going to gamble. And he started playing poker and blackjack, but not just regular. He was playing high stakes tournaments.
Online?
No, I don't think so. In person, I believe. Really high stakes poker and blackjack tournaments. And he basically took out his entire life savings, which I can only imagine was quite a bit, and was trying to, double, triple, whatever, make more money from it. Didn't work out that way.
Rarely does, from what I hear.
Yeah. He pretty much lost everything. And so now he not only was hard up for money just to show his dad that he was contributing, but he was in debt to some of these poker and blackjack players. So the police thought, all right, well, maybe Eddie is someone that he owes money to, a loan shark or something. So they put out a bolo for any loan sharks named Eddie. And in the meantime, they decided, let's try to look at some of the other evidence we have. And the first thing they wanted to look at was that black car that the neighbors said picked up the killer. Because as the detectives were kind of recreating the timeline, they realized, well, there's a really good chance that we may have passed this car when we were coming. Because remember, the housekeeper called 911 while Tony was still being killed. So police really just missed the killer is what they're thinking. So
just minutes after she had called comes the person dressed in black with the face mask.
Right.
To be picked up by the car.
Right.
The alleged killer.
So they decided to check their dash cam footage.
Oh, did they pass one?
And I saw the dash cam footage, actually. I'll have to try and screen record and post it because it really shows you the neighborhood really well. And then they see a dark car that they drive by. Obviously, at the time, they didn't think anything of it. It was a black VW Jetta. And they did pass by it, but the video quality wasn't clear enough. They couldn't see the driver or the license plate. They could just make out that it was a black Jetta.
That's something.
Better than nothing, for sure. So they turned back to the list of friends and continued going through the names until they got to the last name on the list, Chie Coggins Johnson, who the housekeeper had said was Tony's ex-girlfriend. So detectives were anxious to talk to her because the housekeeper also said she had been living there. But it was very difficult for them to find her. It took them days to find her. They contacted her mom. Her mom said she doesn't have a cell phone, but her new boyfriend, Scott Barker, does. So they called Scott. He said, oh, yeah, she's with me right now. They spoke to her, and they said, can you guys come to the police station? We just want to ask you some questions.
Well, I have a question because I don't know if it's something you said or just where I went in my mind of the individual running out of the home in the black outfit and the black mask, jumping into the black VW. Why did I think it was a male? Did the housekeeper identify it as a male, or that just came to my mind?
I think the housekeeper and both the neighbors that were walking
said
they
a male
thought it was
figure.
a male. Yeah, they thought it looked like a male.
Which
Hard to
who
tell.
knows, right?
Totally.
Okay.
this was another question that I had. They talked to all of these friends, and I don't believe they asked any of them to come into the police station, but they did ask Chie to come into the police station, and maybe that's because she lived there. She was an ex-girlfriend. She's much closer, so they agreed to come in. And a few hours later, they arrived and they called the detective and said, we're here in the parking lot. Where should we go? He said, just stay there. I'm going to come and I'll meet you in the parking lot and walk in with you. And when he was in the parking garage waiting for them, he sees them pull up in a black VW Jetta.
I mean, I guess in 2010, well, I guess it wasn't even CCTV or anyone's home camera. It was the cop
dash cam. Yeah. So the detective is like, what? This can't be a coincidence. Like, we cannot have passed a black VW Jetta in this fancy Beverly Hills neighborhood. That's what I was going to say too.
It's not just on the regular, LA highway or freeways. Yeah.
And so they decided very quickly after realizing the car that they drove up in, they said, we're going to interview you guys, but we're going to interview you separately. So they put Chie and Scott in separate rooms, and they started talking to Chie, and they said, can you tell us where you were the morning of Tony's murder, July 20th? And she says, I can't remember because we've been out really late the night before. We were at a friend's house partying. We were playing rock band, and we were really drunk. And the morning after is like kind of a blur, so I really don't know. Scott in the other room was even less forthcoming. He really wasn't saying anything. And when he saw the detective put a tape recorder on the table, he said, is that a tape recorder? And the detective said, yeah. And Scott immediately started yelling, trying to yell through the wall. Chie, don't talk to anyone. Don't talk anymore. They're obviously doing something here. And so she heard him through the wall and completely stopped talking. She said, I'm sorry, I can't talk anymore. The cop said, well, why? And she said, I want my lawyer. So the detectives are interviewing them. Some of the other cops decide to go to the car. Now, I can't get into the car, but they're just looking through the window, seeing if there's anything that could be probable cause. So they see a bottle of bleach. They smell bleach. There's no floor mats in the car, and they see a couple burn marks. And so they think that this is all enough probable cause that it looks like they were trying to get rid of evidence. And so they decide to arrest both Chie and Scott on suspicion of murder, which to me feels like a very light. Like you looked through the window of a car and saw a bottle of bleach. That's enough to arrest them on suspicion of murder?
I also want to know what happened. Did they find anything with the footprints and the shoes? What are Scott or Chie's shoes doing? You
know what? I'm going to tell you. I'm keep that in your mind.
It's in my mind.
Okay. So the detectives did. This was enough probable cause to arrest them on suspicion of murder, but they knew that these charges wouldn't stick unless they got more evidence. So they were able to get a warrant for inside the Jetta and to search Scott's apartment. But they really didn't find anything aside from the fact that it was obvious the Jetta had been recently cleaned, but there was really no physical evidence, nothing linking them to a murder found in the car, and not in his apartment either. So the detectives were kind of stumped. They didn't really know how to move forward because they'd already talked to a lot of friends. They got a warrant. They searched things.
Well, I imagine they also searched Tony or Tony's dad's mansion that he was living in. Yeah,
of course. But that's harder because Chie was living there. So, of course, her fingerprints, DNA, everything was everywhere.
Well, as they were at Scott's.
Exactly. So there was really no movement on the case at this point for about a month. About a month later, Chie's lawyer contacted the police and said, my client would like to give a statement. So on August 25th, she sat down with her lawyer and detectives. And she said, I was at Tony's house on the morning of the 20th. And I witnessed Tony's murder. But she said, I want to make sure that I give you all of the details of everything leading up to that. And she wrote a 35-page document which had like every single detail for the 3 weeks leading up to the murder.
That ultimately landed with she didn't do it, she just witnessed it.
Well, I'm going to tell you. So according to Chie, her relationship with Tony had been over for almost a year, and her new romance with Scott had been going really well, but it took a turn for the worse after Scott found out she was still living with Tony. And so since finding this out, she said that Scott had become like really jealous, really controlling. He wouldn't let her talk to her friends. She wasn't allowed to go anywhere in public without him. And she told the police Scott was forcing me to leave LA so that we could get away from Tony. But he didn't even want me to say goodbye to my friends, my family, and certainly not Tony. He just wanted us to leave. And then she went on to say, but it wasn't even Scott's jealousy over like the past relationship. Yeah, he didn't love that I was living with Tony. He was upset about that. But there was something more. She told prosecutors that when Tony's money like dried up, when his parents stopped giving him money, he came up with a plan to make money. He lost all that money gambling. He now has nothing. So he talked to her and he said, you know, you're living here. You want to keep living here. We're going to put your pictures on Craigslist and advertise that you're available for like erotic photographs and potentially more. I saw different articles that said like prostitution. Some just said she was advertising posing for erotic photographs for people.
Was she open to this because she had nowhere else to go?
Yeah,
I mean, open.
Right.
I'm saying quote unquote open. Like perhaps she did not want to do it, but she didn't know what else to do.
According to her, yes, that's exactly correct. She said, since I had nowhere else to go, I didn't have anywhere to live, I felt like I had to go along with this. You know, she said, she told police, like, Tony forced me to, but I also didn't say no because I was afraid I would be out on the street. The cops found it a little bit hard to believe that Tony was like forcing her to do this.
Well, also she could have gone, even if her boyfriend Scott might have soon been evicted. That was a place to live.
Yeah, of course, yes. She said when Scott found out about this, he became enraged. He went on and on about how Tony was sexually abusing his girlfriend, pimping her out. For a week straight, he didn't sleep. He would not stop talking about this. And she became so frightened by his behavior that she said to him one night at a party, she said, I don't know if I want to move to Florida with you. I'm not sure this was a good idea. He was, for some reason, shocked by this. They didn't speak the rest of the night. They left the party and went to Scott's house to go to sleep.
Well, a part of me, okay, I don't know the real, like, how it played out in real life, but I think it's natural for a partner to kind of freak out if you're being told that your current partner's ex-partner is encouraging them to do sexual photos or sexual acts, and let's post it on Craigslist.
Totally. Yeah, I agree. So she went on to say, so they went home, they went to bed. She claims that Scott abruptly woke her up the next morning at 5 a.m. He said, get up, we're going for a ride. Scott was dressed in black from head to toe. She said, what's going on? And he wouldn't answer. He just said, get in the car, we're going for a ride. So she was a little frightened of him. Again, this is all allegedly, because this is just coming out of her mouth. She said, I was a little frightened by him, so I obeyed. I got in the car. And when she realized they were driving in the direction of Tony's house, she kind of started panicking. And she was like, what the hell are you doing? Why? Where are we going? Why are we going to Tony's? Why? And he said, don't worry. I'm just going to scare the guy a little bit. But she said that once they pulled up outside of Tony's house, he pulled out a duffel bag with a large kitchen knife. And she was now terrified. She said that Scott ordered her to go climb the fence, to go to Tony's window and knock on the window and lure him outside. So she did. She climbed the fence. She tapped on the window, signaled to Tony to meet her at the garage.
The way I can justify this in my brain, if she's like, why are we going there? What are you doing? Is she was afraid of Scott's behavior. She was just going to listen to whatever he said.
That's
even
right.
if she didn't want to do
what he was. She didn't. According to her, she didn't. She was just terrified. When Tony started to come outside, he looked confused. She tried to warn him not to come out. But Scott was hiding in the garage. Like, Scott was hiding around the corner. She didn't know how much he could hear. She didn't know what if he heard her? Is he going to kill her? So she was trying to signal to Tony, like, don't come out, stay inside. Tony kind of looked confused. And
sounds like he had just woken up or something, or like,
it's 5 a.m.
Yeah, he's in his pajama boxers. Yeah.
Yep. So she's trying to get him to stay inside, but at a certain point, she realizes she just needs to get out of here because maybe she's scared of Scott is going to do something to her now. So she turns and goes back towards the fence. And in her head, she's just hoping, like, please let Tony go inside, close the door, and nothing will happen. But that is not what happened. While she was going towards the fence and hopping over the fence to get back to her car, she heard a voice which sounded like Tony saying, "What the fuck? What the fuck? What the fuck?" She also heard a female start screaming, which would be the housekeeper. So she says she was so scared she got in her car and drove away, hoping to find a police car and flag them down. And after she drove a little bit in this direction, she was like, there's no cars. So she turned around and decided to go back through the neighborhood the other direction, which would take her back by Tony's house. But when she was driving by Tony's house, she was surprised to see Scott standing in the middle of the road. And he, got her to slow the car down. He jumped in and said, "Take me to Malibu," to this kind of private beach that they had gone to before. She said that as they were driving, Scott was bragging about killing Tony, that he was such a pussy. I jumped out from behind. I had him in a chokehold. I stabbed him. Once they got to Malibu, Scott rinsed his clothes in the ocean, put them in a Ralph's bag with the knife and the floor mats and, gloves and all of the things that were involved that he was wearing, even his shoes, all went in this bag, and they kind of buried it in this ravine in Malibu Canyon. So after Chie's confession, they upped Scott's charge from suspicion of murder to murder in the first degree. But they also knew that they would need more than just her.
Yeah, because that's just her. And it's not even
hearsay.
her confession, really. I mean,
no, she's
involved, but
right.
It's not her confessing. It's her saying, this is what I witnessed and what I was kind of brought into.
Right. And so they were like, well, she did help kind of cover up a murder, so we can't just let her go. Yeah. And we do need more. We need more than just her testimony. So they agreed to cut her a deal if she would take them to the location in Malibu where he buried the stuff. And if that actually panned out, then she would get 5 years probation and nothing else.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take you right there if I was. And
wow. She sure did. She took them there. They uncovered a lot of stuff, actually. They recovered 2 knives, 4 floor mats from the Volkswagen, a black hat, a black thermal that had a rip in it, a black and white scarf, black gloves, black basketball shorts, black socks, a pair of boxer shorts, a pair of Nike shoes, and a Ralph's grocery bag. And the fabric that was found in Tony's hand was consistent with being ripped from that black thermal shirt. And the shoe prints at the crime scene were the same as the shoes found buried in Malibu.
Do you know what kind of shoes they were?
Nikes.
Black Nikes, I bet, with the white swoops. Also, I guess it was 5 a.m. because I was going to say, what makes some people think that, like, just all black clothing is going to... But it was 5 a.m.
Well, and it's nondescript. So, I mean, I guess you could wear all white clothing if you wanted to, but that seems like it would be weird because blood. If you're going to kill somebody, you want something where the blood's not going to stand out. And
well, if you want to not stand out, don't wear a face mask.
Well, right.
In July.
You're right. You're totally right.
I get it's 5 a.m., so it's still dark, perhaps, or just becoming light.
Right.
So I understand the black in the blood, like don't show blood, but like.
But yeah, you're gonna look odd with a face mask on.
But I guess
especially
at that point,
jumping
people
over
are
a
just trying to
fence.
hurry up and get out of there.
So Scott's trial began in September 2012. They presented all of this evidence: the knife, the torn black sweater. Scott's DNA was on all of these clothes. But they knew that it would be Chie's testimony that would hopefully seal this deal. Unfortunately, though, when she took the stand, she completely froze. She could get no words out. And Scott's attorneys jumped all over this. They were like, she can't talk because she's lying. She masterminded the whole thing and framed Scott. They claimed that Chie had a co-conspirator who had worked with her to use Scott's car, cell phone to kind of plan this whole thing and make it look like it was Scott, but it was really her and a co-conspirator. And they said that they thought the co-conspirator was Eddie.
Thank you. I was just looking at my notes saying, what happened to this Eddie situation?
So they said, even though we never found an Eddie, we believe that that's who it was, and they were just framing Scott. Prosecutors rebutted by saying Eddie was just a red herring. He's a nothing.
Yeah, but the housekeeper said Eddie.
She sure did. But when she took the stand, suddenly she went back on her statement. She said, I'm not actually sure that I heard it correctly. It did sound like Eddie, but I could be wrong. I can't say for sure. The defense also pointed out that Scott's DNA was not found at the crime scene, and that those neighbors, they described someone that could have been a man, but basically said it was a dark-haired person that they thought might be of Spanish or Middle Eastern descent.
Oh, well, that could be a lot of things. I mean,
it
obviously.
could, but Scott was very white. Chie was not.
Right.
However, October 2nd, it took the jury only 3 hours to convict Scott of first-degree murder, and he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Chie had no jail time, just probation, moved back in with her mom, and, tried to quietly move on with her life. Her probation expired in 2016, and Scott is still in prison. I couldn't find out where, but I believe somewhere in California. He still maintains his innocence and continues to try and appeal this case, but so far, no luck.
So what do you think? I mean,
I do not believe her. I do think that Scott probably did kill Tony.
but you don't believe that she was so uninvolved?
Not at all. I don't think that she was she was terrified of him, and she was, you're terrified of him, then leave him before this ever happened. You know what I mean? I think that she played a
bigger part
in coming up with the plan, in all of it. And I think because it took her a month to come make a statement after they had both been arrested on suspicion of murder, that, I don't know, she fabricated this, her and her lawyer fabricated this. I do not believe she was an innocent bystander forced to participate in this. What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I got caught up in looking up something regarding Eddie and Japanese, because remember I said maybe she was not saying Eddie, maybe she was saying Chie. But I just typed in does Eddie mean anything in Japanese? The closest I could find is the Western in Japanese, the Western meaning of the name Eddie, the closest matching kanji name, which is Japanese, and they say they spell it EDI, means a wealthy guardian. So maybe she was just yelling. Okay, this is my weird brain, but maybe she was just yelling the owner of the resident of the home.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, neither of us speak
we
Japanese.
Don't have any.
There's no context for us to know.
But also, there's no landing on the Eddie thing. And I get she kind of pulled back and said, maybe I didn't say that, or maybe I didn't hear. I don't know what.
There's to me, this case, this was, I mean, yes, they obviously did something. Scott's DNA was on the knife, was on the clothes. She took them to where it was buried. It
For sure. They were involved. I mean, they did it.
They did it, right.
Who did how much and who planned
Exactly.
what is unknown.
I mean, I don't know. I don't believe that she had so little to do with it, which is just so unfair for Scott. Well, for Tony, first of all, but for Scott to be taking the full blame.
Well, who knows though?
Yeah.
Lots
of questions. This was another one that I was like, ooh, there's going to be a big twist here. And the only twist really was that Chie said that Scott did it. She had nothing to do with it, which to me wasn't really. I was reading like an overview of this case before I picked it, and it was like, ooh, with twists and turns, like a Hollywood movie. And I was like, okay, cool. Because the last one we did, remember, was so straightforward. And then I got like deep into this one and was like, oh my God, what's the twist? That's the twist? Kind of straightforward.
Well, maybe there's a twist. I mean, I don't know.
I'd
The
love
only
to know what
twist would
she's
be the
doing.
housekeeper did it.
Yeah, that would be a big twist. I don't know. I could have even handled a twist that it was like a loan shark or somebody gambling or his dad had hired a hitman. You know,
so he had to stop paying for his son's wealthy life.
Like,
Yeah.
you know, there's a million, but then that really, you know, that's just not what happened. So that's not it. But, yeah, that is the murder of Tony Takazato. And,
Katsutoshi.
yeah, I
That's
really
full name.
love
Yeah.
the name. Really cool. It doesn't seem like he really had, I mean, his dad lived in Japan. His dad didn't even come to Scott's trial or anything. So of course say our thoughts go out to the family, but it sounds like he really didn't have, a lot of family.
Maybe his chosen party family.
That's right. Chosen party family. So thoughts go out to them and everyone else involved in this story. Yeah. Kind of an interesting one.
Yeah, I like it. I like it's not the Southwest, but I like the
I
place.
I do too. It's funny because I was thinking I'd love to do a random story from like the Pacific Northwest. And then I was like, well, then it could be it could be Death by Northwest or Death by Pacific Northwest or something like that, just for that one episode, you know?
Sure.
I think it's okay to change it up here and there. That's it, guys. So thank you for listening. Hopefully you enjoyed our murder story of the day. And please send us questions, comments, emails, voicemails, and we will be back next week with another murder story.
Perhaps from the Southwest or the Pacific Northwest Southwest.
There you go. That's right. All right. Bye, guys.
Good night and good luck. Bye-bye. Death by Southwest is hosted by Jenna Schneider and Margot Carmichael.
Executive produced by Margot Carmichael.
Produced by Jenna Schneider.
Audio editing and sound design by Margot Carmichael.
Music by Soundstripe.
And a special thanks to Edward R. Murrow for letting us borrow his famous sign-off phrase, good night and good luck.